This is Jim with Embervane, and today we're going to talk about how you get started making music on your computer. It has never been easier to make music than today. Sure, the skill of instrumentation and understanding notes and chords and all that stuff is still there and still needs to be learned. However, to actually be able to say, in a matter of even minutes in some cases, go from, hey, I've got a computer, to, hey, I'm making music, that has never been shorter than before. And that's pretty awesome. So let's talk about what you actually need to make music on a computer. Number one, you need the computer. That's kind of obvious. We're going to leave that one as a, yeah, had to have it. Otherwise, how'd we be making music? Number two, you need to have something to listen on. Typically, that's going to be a pair of headphones on a minimal setup. It could be studio monitors, which would be a speaker setup that requires some extra work inside your physical home studio area to get it sounding right. So headphones are generally a recommended starting path. And then three, you need to have a piece of software called a DAW. D-A-W stands for Digital Audio Workstation. This is your command center. The DAW is where everything comes together. It's going to act like a series of stacked timelines for each of the tracks that you are going to either record or put MIDI instruments into or samples into, and they will all get put together and rendered or bounced into your final song once your project is done. That's it. That's actually all you need. So if you've already got a pair of headphones and a computer, you are literally one step away from making music on your computer, and that would be the DAW. Now, that was only what we would need, but is it what we will end up with? No, probably not. Probably, depending on how you prefer to make music, you could end up with a MIDI controller, for example, something that allows you to key in notes or uses pads to be able to control the computer and say, make music in this way. Regardless of which option you choose, if you're more into the, let's call it direct performance aspect, those are some items that are going to be optional, and they'll come along later as well. On top of that, you may end up needing additional software to further expand your toolkit, but that's not where we start. And this video is about getting started. And when we get started, we try to use the tools we have and make sure we understand the fundamentals before we worry about bells and whistles coming down the way. Now, one other piece of gear that you may hear about is an audio interface. Back in the old days, when I was growing up, there were physical cards called sound cards that you would plug into your computer, much like you would plug a video card into today. Then, as technology got better and all that technology shrunk down, the sound cards started to become attached to the motherboards on computers. Now, you don't worry about a sound card in your laptop, you just plug your headphones into the jack and you hear stuff. That's because the sound card is built in. However, that particular sound card, especially as you progress in time through music production, may not be beefy enough to actually support your music production needs. And that's where an audio interface comes in. An audio interface sits between the computer and you, like your microphone, for example. So if you wanted to record your own vocals, you could theoretically plug directly into a regular computer, but it's not going to be as good of a quality as if you had plugged in through an audio interface. The job of the audio interface is to convert analog signals, much like my voice being spoken right now, into a digital signal, ones and zeros, and then convert it back from the ones and zeros to that analog waveform so we can hear it, because we don't hear ones and zeros so well. So with that, this is another piece of gear that you're going to be exposed to, but you probably don't need to worry about that right away. We are, after all, getting started. So keep that in mind. There's more information at the articles on embervane.com in the Insights section that'll talk much further detail about this. But for right now, let's move on to the next item. Now, another thing that you're going to need to be able to produce music successfully are skills. And as you know, skills don't tend to happen overnight. Unfortunately, let's be realistic, our brains do not just immediately absorb something like we plugged a chip in or we're in the Matrix, and next thing you know, you can fly a helicopter. It doesn't work that way. And technically, that's actually a good thing. Because as life is more of a journey than a destination, so is the idea of you finding your sound and what you want to work on in music production. So let's touch on a couple of these skills right off the bat. Number one, you'll need to have a skill in recording things if you are going to do your own vocals, you're going to record other people's vocals, or you're going to record instruments outside the computer. What's a great example? Well, how about a guitar? If you're playing on a guitar and you have an amp and you stick a microphone in front of that amp, there's some skill involved in being able to capture the sound in a good fashion to then get it through your audio interface into your DAW. So there's one of the skills. Another one of the skills is editing. Now that you have a recording, or even if you had started inside of the DAW, maybe with a loop sample or a MIDI instrument, we still need to be able to have the skill to edit the parts that didn't make sense. For example, what happens if somebody was singing, they sang one line or one half of a line really good, and then on another take, they sang the back half of the line better. You need to be able to go in there, trim those edges, and line them up so it sounds as if they sang the whole thing at their best. And those kind of skills fall under editing. If you are going to be making music using virtual instruments, you'll need to have some skills regarding MIDI. And with MIDI, which is its own world, this allows you to basically say, hey, I can click my mouse, I can click my keyboard, I'm talking about your computer keyboard, I can click a piano-style keyboard, a MIDI controller, or some pads, and have them generate sounds inside my computer, and I could control these virtual instruments even though I don't know how to play them. Examples would be, hey, I need an orchestra right here to create a big old swell. You might hold 3 notes down on a MIDI controller, and all of a sudden you have a whole orchestra playing for you. But that's a different skill set. You'll need to also be able to have some mixing skills. Now, whether or not you want to get into mixing, the reality is we must think about how mixing comes into play. And what is it? Well, if we want to use a food analogy, the production aspect, or getting things prepared, is a lot of prep work and technically actually cooking food, right? Like we're cooking the little bits of the food. The mixing would be saying, like, I want to take all that food now and I had it cooked, but I need to compose it into a dish that makes sense. Maybe I need to add a sauce. Maybe a different vegetable would go better with this particular meat. You're doing this on a music level. It also means that you're taking all of those tracks that we talked about, those individually recorded or different instruments, and they are being blended together into the final stereo output sound. They are being mixed together to create that final song. This is a skill that, generally speaking, is a good one to have, at least to understand what do I need to do on the front end to make sure that the mix is actually going to work the way it needs to. So there's one more. And then finally, it's a great idea to have a creative workflow. Now, you may think it's a workflow. How is that a skill? Well, I believe this is a skill. I believe that having a workflow and understanding, how you work best, the times of day when you work better on certain items, as well as how you stay focused, how you stay in the creative state and don't get distracted and flip into edit state, these are really important. This kind of stuff is going to allow you to take a song idea from beginning all the way to the end much better, as well as much more consistently. A lot of these skills, they require doing the reps, doing the repetitions, practicing these things, and giving yourself the grace of patience to understand that this is a learning process, and most certainly a marathon, if not a couple, as opposed to a sprint. To get good, we need to practice. Now, as we wrap up this video, I just wanted to say that the full version of the article that goes into even more detail is over on the Embervane Insights page. There'll be a link in the description below where you can click on that and check it out. I want to close with some words of encouragement. I want to say that if you are going to undertake this journey, this quest to create music on the computer, as I did in the past, that it is pretty darn awesome, but it could also be pretty frustrating. Frustration normally comes when we think we need some other magical piece of gear, some other piece of instrument or software that's out there to change our world. That is not the case. The real frustration comes from not having the fundamental skills built to be able to understand how to use those other tools. So don't worry about gear right now. Don't worry about add-ons and fancy other items. Don't worry about what other people are doing. You just focus on you, because you have everything you need to be able to start learning how to make music. And if you follow along in videos like these and check out the articles on the Insights page, they too will help you move ahead. But nothing is going to replace actually doing it, which is why it's awesome that you're watching the video, but I really want to encourage you to practice what we're talking about here. Go try a DAW. Go find one of my articles and look at how to choose a DAW. Find one and play with it. Fiddle around just for the purpose of exploration. And when you find one that clicks, you'll know. And when that happens, you will blow open the doors to what could be an awesome musical future. All right, that covers it for this video. If you got something out of it, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you'd like me to break down next. And if you want to check out the full interactive article on this topic, just click on the link in the description below. Now go make some music, and I'll catch you in the next one.